Wik-young's father was talking to his homeroom teacher. Hearing how good his son was because he had won a gold medal in the International Science Olympiad, he was not on the table. Wik-young used to study at Seoul Moon Sinseo School. Wik-young was led by the teacher to launch a new class. When the whole class was applauding the do in greeting, the junkie appeared late. He smiled and said, "Teacher, I'm stuck in the subway, so I'm late." Wik-young stood up and introduced himself with a brief sentence that gradually greeted everyone as Wik-young. At the end of the movie, the children in the class clapped again as if they were watching a stand-up comedy. Wik-young retreated to his seat, Junkie glanced at him for a while and then collapsed on the bed as if he had never had a class. In the future-oriented class, the teacher said that I heard that in Seoul Moon School, Wik-young is the first in the school, so the whole class is a little lighter. Then he turned to remind the boy to stop bullying you. Who would have thought that the other person turned his face and asked a question about why he was at the top of the school but moved back to our school? The whole class was silent as if frozen, and the teacher was reluctant to leave for the countryside. Wik-young put his hand on the beautiful hum-ee that made him spicier than eating Siamese chili. After school, Wik-young still worked hard to learn more math. He left with a familiar hand when he received a message from his father saying that he was late today. At the same time, he told him to take pictures of all the math problems and send them to him. Wik-young came home and found his mother asleep on a chair. Mom asked him a few questions and then Wik-young asked if I could try my medicine. After hearing that, his mother also stopped asking again. "I only need to go to school, but I also need to take medicine, son." Wik-young didn't answer but greeted his mother and walked straight. He picked up a future-oriented piece of paper and was about to write something, but suddenly he heard the sound of entering the password to open the door of the room, so he hid it in a hurry and continued to pretend to do math. Dad walked in and asked him what page he had done. After that, he muttered about the people in the hospital that made him angry. He found that Wik-young was not concentrating, so he put his hands on his head as if pressing a detonator. Wik-young apologized and had to start over, and if he made a mistake, he was stuck again. Just like that until he did it right, he was loved by his father as if he had never been in pain and wanted to cry. After the scene, Wik-young lies on the bed and listens to it and suddenly strangles himself. He was in the middle of the music like that, screaming in silence. He was so surprised that the light was also cold. The next morning, Wik-young looked at the plane in the schoolyard. His gaze was straight but deep down was something unknown. At this time, Minsup is being beaten for not buying bread for Hongyi. Hongyi coldly warned Minsup and Wik-young quietly walked into class. He sat down and opened the book like that nothing happened out there. Koi continued to encroach on the Minsup to break the last 2,000 goals of the poor friend. Wik-young glanced at the orientation paper and remembered his father's words last night. He had forced him to become a doctor, so fate was a contract with no amendments. Suddenly, Hongyi climbed onto Minsup's back and made him make a horse drag through the corridor, causing Wik-young's tape to fall to the ground. He finally picked it up and stopped when he saw that Koi was violently poking his head in Minsup. That scene recalled the moment when he himself was poked by his father, as if his life was being rewinded. Wik-young shouted at the Koi in the heavy air. Koi turned around and threw a kick at him like that, wanting to let the class know who the rules were. Wik-young ordered me to pin you. After that, the group returned to class and Wik-young sat at the table. Quietly looking at the tape in his hand like that, he was holding a piece of himself that was just bold. After school, the Koi were already standing in front of the school gate waiting for Wik-young. They pushed him to a strange place and then blatantly told him to give him money because they dared to annoy them. Hongyi didn't say no to his wallet. When he searched his wallet and saw that it was full of money, he found out that Wik-young was the son of a real rich family. He pretended to be kind and returned 10,000 G, but before he could finish showing it, he was snatched back by his accomplices. Hongyi was annoyed and saved his number on Wik-young's phone and named him Hongyi Daika. He also gradually realized that every time he texted, he had to watch and reply within 10 seconds. Wik-young said that he went to extra school, so he was not allowed to use his phone at home. Before he had time to catch the sentence, he ate the whole slap. He didn't resist, just quietly turned his back and walked away like that, leaving nothing to lose. One of those guys with a face as cold as money began to notice this attitude of his. That night, Wik-young continued to be tutored by his father. Late at night, he lay on the bed and peeled his own neck like a painless reflex. The next day, when he sat in the car, he rubbed his neck and heard his father remind him that if he didn't get good on this exam, he would have to go down to the intermediate class. Wik-young still wears his listening arms. The phone handle receives a message from Hongyi to buy bread. He didn't reply to his father, nor did he react at all. Just quietly put his hands on his hand and then fell asleep like that, tired and took up all his consciousness. As soon as he arrived at school, Wickyong was bothered by Hongi for not bringing bread. Seeing that Wickyong kept wearing his listening hand and answering in a nonchalant manner, he snatched the listening hand from his neck. Hongi understood and showed pleasure as if she had picked up a new toy. So he announced that he would always take it for convenience. Wickyong boldly demanded it because this was something important to him. But Hongi has already given you a shot, and from now on, this is mine. Refusing to give up, Wickyong called Koi back. The boy laughed half-heartedly and looked at him with excited eyes. He took off his hand and listened, got it dirty, and then told the important thing to come and take it. Wickyong walked over to retrieve it, but Hongi dropped the tape and his hand was throwing away the item. You were angry in the eyes and said clearly that I said it was important. Hongi not only didn't stop, but also stepped forward and kicked the tape right in front of Wickyong. He kept putting his hand on his head as if he was forcing a reaction, and the reaction came. Wickyong threw a punch that flew straight to the table, causing the whole class to startle. Hongi got mad and rushed to kick it again and ordered the door to be closed for private trial. He went to play duel and Wickyong didn't fit in and flew into the battle to the dock. The two guys fought to the point of ignoring the tables and chairs that were trampled like a local battlefield. At one point, Hongi locked Wickyong's hand, and he wrestled it back. The two sides took turns dominating, making the friends around them only cry out because they were too tense. Wickyong hit so hard that his throaty mouth was bleeding. Then he grabbed his head and pressed it to the ground. Then strangled, causing Hongi to suffocate in the field. A junior was about to go to the can, but was stopped by a junkie with a sober look. He told me not to interfere in the chocolate match and I am the referee today. Wickyong squeezed until his face turned pale before letting go of his hand. Hongi lay breathing like a stranded fish but still tried to look heroic. And Wickyong just coldly said that I said it was important. Then he bent down to pick up the earpiece and tape as if there had never been a fight. Suddenly, Hongi was about to turn the chair upside down. But Wickyong dodged and counterattacked with a punch that knocked him down. Unable to get up, Wickyong walked to the table with a junkie's admiring gaze. After school, Junkie came to start a conversation and praised him harshly but also warned that if he touched Hongi, his friends would not leave him alone. Wickyong didn't bother to react after hearing it. He just left silently, leaving Junkie standing and waving his hand as if he was saying goodbye to a guy who was not afraid of death. Wickyong sits on the bus. For the first time in the movie, his face smiles when he remembers the scene of being held on fire. It seemed that fighting again made him more excited than going to the good student exam. But he suddenly realized that he had gone to the station. Arriving a little late, he still crouched down to do the test as if his life depended on every word. As soon as he arrived home that night, Wickyong was asked by his father why he was late for class. He bowed his head in apology and said he had fallen asleep on the bus. At that moment, his mother suddenly turned on the TV as loud as it could. Dad still kept calm and told me, "You're talking." His mother then corrected herself with a cold expression as if she had never turned out loud. Wickyong was told by his father to take a shower and then go to school. He said he would come in later. He walked into the room and saw his brother sitting at the desk. The older brother gave Wickyong a pair of headphones and told him to listen to music with his heart. Wickyong was still frozen and didn't understand, but his father walked in, startling him back to reality. He asked him how he had done the math and sat down at the table like that nothing had happened. The next morning, Wickyong came to school and Hongi came again. He was embarrassed as if he had just been rejected by Grat because he was embarrassed to be fed onions by Wickyong. Wickyong saw this and apologized in a low voice as a way to end. But Hongi didn't care at all and made an appointment to meet again to prepare for a match. Junkie appeared awake at this time and said that I had already told him. Anyway, there are guys in woolen hats who come looking for you. He was a trembling car. People who have practiced boxing should punch with that force like a bare chicken eating the head of a bottle. However, Wickyong warns Junkie not to get too close because he doesn't want to cause trouble with anyone. Unexpectedly, he was going to the toilet when he was shaken and kicked for an unannounced opening shot. Junkie was still straight in like a spectator, but Hongi was about to punch him for fun. But the car trembled and turned to his face, saying that you were stupid, so people punched you, Buffalo Boy. Wickyong tried to explain to the trembling that his junior was wrong first. But before he could finish the sentence, he ate a punch in the face that made his mouth bleed like an unskillful action movie. Ung trembled and ordered Wickyong to kneel down to apologize. But he stood still because he didn't see anything wrong. Ung trembled and began to count to 3 with a murderous gaze, and Wickyong clenched his hands and prepared his fists from the time he counted 1. The atmosphere was tense as if the strings were about to break, when suddenly there was a teacher's voice warning that smoking would be punched. As soon as he finished speaking, he walked in, making the whole group pause. The teacher saw that the little Wikiong was bloodied, so he turned to scold the whole group like water. Then he pointed to his trembling face and cursed, from punching and kicking without knowing how to think, to the habit of making a disorderly child. He scolded so enthusiastically that he dragged his trembling mother into the story. This guy turned around and asked what it had to do with my mother. It seemed that he knew that he wanted to punch the teacher so much, but he tried to hold back. His hands clenched behind his back as if locking the mechanism of strangling himself from losing control. The trembling followed Wikiong into class with uninvited excitement. This guy keeps sitting and talking about praise. He promised to train Wikiong to become a person who knew how to resist. But Wikiong just replied as cold as ice that I wouldn't fight. The trembling pointed to the cardinal who was sitting in the corner of the classroom. His eyes were as bitter as a dangerous chili staring at Wikiong. Yet he still stopped turning away and said in a low voice, "I beg you to dodge me." At the end of the period, when everyone was cleaning up, Wikiong came in and found someone searching his briefcase. Anything comes and comes. The tape was gone and the phone was now called by the cardinal as a declaration of war. He made an appointment for Wikiong to go to the same place where he had been beaten for daring to get him called up to meet the teacher. Wikiong angrily shouted into his phone and then grabbed his briefcase and walked away like a train without winning. Trembling when he saw that, he also grabbed his socks and ran after him, and his mouth was camouflaged. "Don't run for a while, it's very disturbing." Meanwhile, the trembling voice heard the cardinal say that just by touching the bandage, Wikiong's eyes would be different. At Wikiong's mother's house, she collapsed in front of the door of a certain room. His eyes were in pain as if carrying 10,000 unanswered questions. He trembled when he found out that the tape and headphones belonged to Wikiong's deceased brother. When the two arrived, they saw Ung trembling standing on the stairs, holding out their headphones and a tape as if they were challenging the penis. Wikiong stepped up alone. Ung trembled and said that if you want to take it, you have to fight a battle. Wikiong refused, but was immediately punched in a dangerous place, causing him pain. Below, the juniors laughed gloatingly as if they were watching a play. When Ung Dong was about to give the decisive blow, Wikiong jumped up and counterattacked. The two rushed into each other like two opposite electric currents, because for him this time it was no longer defense but proving that he was not wrong. Ung trembled and knew how to box, so he all aimed at mental points that made it difficult for Wikiong to resist. The last punch caused blood to spill out of his mouth and spill his uniform. But he still stood up, his eyes red as if he didn't accept defeat. Even so, he still got 3 more blows and he made blood drip with every step. It turned out that he was fighting while quietly analyzing the opponent's position. And then Wikiong threw the first counterattack on the trembling face, causing the situation to be reversed coldly and decisively. It's true that fighting with analysis has a chance to resist any type. Wikiong launched a counterattack that caused the cancer to tremble and bleed slightly. He started the owl and flew in to hit him in pain. Anyway, he is still slightly better because he knows boxing and his physical strength is not medium. Wikiong was hit to the ground but had to breathe heavily as if he had just run on the south side of the field. At that time, he trembled while striking and quickly warning that the transfer of schools would not escape him. But Wikiong didn't bother, he slowly got up and took the next position like that with the attack mode on. In his mind, he suddenly remembered the trembling words telling him not to stand still in the punching range but to rush in and roll for the rhythm of the punch. So Wikiong tried to rush in but immediately ate a punch like heaven. He still didn't stop, but continued to rush in again and hit one more blow for enough cows. Shivering outside, he shook his head and muttered, "Oh my god, who's just like that? It's not like a stranded fish." But Wikiong pushed with all his might, causing both of them to fall down the stairs. The sound of the collision was heard in my mind, and the two were lying in pain after the fall, trembling and injured in their legs. Seeing that the opportunity came, Wikiong rushed over and hit him in the leg as if paying off the interest. Then he threw a jaw hook that caused blood to gush out of his mouth trembling, and he collapsed to the ground and could no longer stand up. But Wikiong still didn't put down the fire, but continued to kick him a few more times, and then scolded loudly as if all the memories had accumulated for a long time. "You warn me that I've endured it and you don't know it, don't blame me." That scene made the whole group around him squirm to the fullest. His gaze at Wikiong seemed to be looking at the end. Junkie took a breath and declared Wikiong the winner, and the male protagonist dragged up the stairs to retrieve his tape. And the Hongi guy was standing holding a roll of armbands as if he was supporting his nose because he was afraid of being fed and punched. Ung trembled and was about to get up to follow him to continue fighting, but Junkie stopped him. He spread his hand and gradually declared that you lost, and then go and tie up the boy. Turning to the scene where Wikiong was washing his eyebrows after the battle, Junkie standing next to him made a few on him. Wikiong glanced at him and asked why you were so good to me. Junkie slowly replies that I'm just out of personal curiosity, or maybe I'm the only one who recognizes your talent. Wickyong asked, on the contrary, you don't know how to fight, but you're only good at martial arts, it's really smart. Junkie also didn't just pick up the coach, he didn't need to play, buddy. Suddenly, Wickyong receives a message from his father asking where he is without answering the phone. Immediately afterwards, the call center said that he had not arrived and asked to call his parents back immediately. Seeing that, Junkie immediately agreed to change Wickyong's clothes. He also said that I used to watch YouTube to learn how to remove bloodstains, and then rest assured that I will wash it tomorrow and return it to you. Junkie asks him to eat, but Wickyong says he has to go to the study center, so he can't go. Before leaving, Junkie also gave Wickyong a piece of foundation to cover bruises to avoid confusing the person on the other side. That night, the three boys in the group sat and criticized each other for losing the battle like that, and they didn't have time to swallow the humiliation. Wickyong was in the bathroom using foundation to cover the bruises on his face. As soon as he walked outside, he heard his father scolding the tutoring center because it seemed that he had just gotten a bad grade. The echoing scolding reminded Wickyong of the moment he punched while blood was spilling on his shirt. Then, in the dream, he was called up by his mother with a voice full of shock and regained his spirits. The mother discovered the bruises on her son's body, but Wickyong only said that he fell down playing basketball. He smiled and walked over to open the curtains to catch the early light as a kind of self-reassurance. While sitting at breakfast, the father said that playing basketball during gym time must be very different from the school that is very proud. The father suggested that Wickyong move to another center because if he went down to the intermediate class, there was no point in studying. Wickyong looked directly at his father and said he would try to do better. The father laughed lightly when he heard this. His eyes seemed to have just reduced some of his doubts about the son who had been mercilessly headed. The group of volunteers and cardinals were called to the rooftop by their seniors to handle and warn. Because the road is the same as the first block, but losing to an unknown child like Wickyong is really a national shame. The whole group was beaten without daring to resist, and the purple-faced lieutenant ordered them to find a way to beat Wickyong with bricks or something. Otherwise, today the whole group is determined to go on the same trip. That day after school, Junkie is still as usual to follow the male protagonist. This time the two of them started talking more and Wickyong was still annoyed by the thick-faced friend next to him. Junkie is still dancing as usual when he says, if you don't thank me, it won't hurt me because I still have to go back and wash your shirt. Meanwhile, the Ungjun are hiding in a corner of an alley like a nest of fire ants, waiting for a chance to take revenge. And from the conversation, they learn that the real leader is Jahook. Even though they were in a blood cave, they were still worried that if they punched each other too loudly, they would be easily transferred. Ungjun sees Junkie walking with Wickyong and is so angry that he wants to rush out but can't do anything. Junkie said that Ungjun with Hongyi and Jingu was called up by the second graders today, which meant that Wickyong would now have to face another level. But you still said, frankly, I don't like fighting. While the two were walking and talking, Ungjun suddenly rode a motorcycle and rushed over, holding a large log in his hand and smashing it directly into the back of Wickyong's neck when he had no time to defend himself. After the blow, he drove away like that, just finished a dirty task. Wickyong held his head in pain, his hands were bleeding all over his hands. Junkie panicked and called for an ambulance, but Wickyong just said quietly, don't call it, it's okay, but before he could finish the sentence, he fainted right in Junkie's desperate scream. The male protagonist remembered the scene where his brother used to be taken to the ambulance every day, but now he is just a cold corpse. When Wickyong woke up, he saw that the junkie was wearing his headset, so he immediately jerked back, then took off the water line and hurriedly ran to the tutoring center. As soon as he arrived at the gate of the hospital, he saw his parents waiting like that, knowing that he would come. Meanwhile, the young men were standing outside the gate worried because the appearance of their parents made the situation tense like a string. Wickyong was put in the water transfer again. The father walked over solemnly and asked what had happened, and Junkie quickly made up a scenario that the two of them took a shortcut, so they slipped and fell down the stairs. The father glanced at Junkie with a judgmental look like a child of such a family. Then asking him what he ranked in school, Junkie shyly confessed that he was not very good at studying and quickly withdrew from the scene like the wind. Wickyong also hurriedly asked to go to extra school, but his mother stopped him and scolded him lightly what else to study. He apologized to his parents and then ended his head full of regret, and his father gently told him not to let himself get hurt or get sick. His mother walked out and sat down with a heavy expression as if she had an unquenched memory. Suddenly, a bloody victim was pushed into the emergency room, making her feel like she was being pulled back to the scene where her first son had been taken away without having time to say a word. She sighed tiredly, the pain was still there, and suddenly trembled and asked if it was okay. She said okay, I'm fine, and then asked me if I was a friend of Wickyong. Seeing that they were wearing the same uniforms, they thanked me for visiting, stood a little stiff, and then asked about the situation of Wickyong. Hearing her say that the guy who was beaten by me was fine, he nodded and left. Before that, the male protagonist's mother also glanced at the wound on his face, but his eyes were still full of worry. When Wickham got home, Runke was in another hospital. He went to visit a friend who was kissing and sat next to the bed whispering that I had met a guy who looked exactly like you. As soon as he got home, Wickham quickly walked inside and his mother called him back to ask about school. She suggested that he take a break from school for a while, but Wickham refused. His mother suddenly asked if he was blaming her. Why didn't she share anything made her feel like she was being pushed away? Her voice dropped and she apologized to me because I understood that he was also very tired. But Wickham only said that he wanted to go into the study. He walked into the room and lay down, quietly strangling himself as a way to feel something real. While outside the living room, his parents still have a corner for each of them. The next morning, Wickham went to school again, and Junkie was still fucking following as usual. When the two of them met Jun, he asked, "What do you do when you don't have ice bands? Don't you lie still?" Wickham looked at him and replied, "If you sneak up on me, I'm not calculating. And I want to end here if you still have self-esteem." He left, and Jun warned him not to do any more tricks. But he didn't do anything more and left, making Hongi and Jingu worry because he couldn't handle Wickham as a sure death. That's right, because the three of them were called up by Jihook to fight again. The photo was posted because Jun didn't drag Wickham as he said. Jun says that he dealt with it last night, but Jihook doesn't care. He went straight to the class of smashing the table and smashing the chair of the Wickham sword as if he was competing in who caused the fastest disturbance. Seeing that he sat still and did not react, Jihook began to want to teach him himself. Junkie walked over and told you guys to do it again, and I was forced to call the teacher. Jihook heard that, so he stopped fighting and didn't fight anymore, but turned to punch Hongi because he was disgraced by such a child. After that, Jihook announces that Wickham and Junkie must go to the rooftop to meet him after lunch. Otherwise, he will not be at peace until graduation. On the rooftop, Jihook holds a stick as if preparing the last sperm and wants to punish Wickham for not answering earlier. Wickham repeatedly apologizes and begs for Junkie's forgiveness. So Jihook lets Junkie stand aside. He told Wickham to take the blame for the previous incident that had disgraced him, and then called Jun to look at it with his own eyes. Meanwhile, Junkie stood by and warned Hongi not to touch Wickham anymore if he didn't want to unload the grave early. Wickham apologizes to Jun, and then Jihook orders him to hit him. However, Jun did not move, but stood like a stone statue. Jihook gets mad and hits Jun back, causing him to be beaten repeatedly in front of the whole group. The second graders stood and laughed, and Jun's accomplices began to see clearly. Wickham saw this and came out and snatched the stick from Jihook's hand. Wickham went to ask Junkie, "If I beat these guys, how many more of them would come to me?" Junkie woke up and replied to the two of them, then confirmed that if you deal with both of them, it will be over. So Wickham grabbed the stick tightly and suddenly threw it to the ground in the admiring eyes of everyone who was watching. Wickham's father is still in a meeting with the staff. They are reporting the hospital's business results. The situation is also temporarily fine. It turned out that his father called to ask if Wickham was coming for the weekend. Wickham's father said that he was too busy studying to get anywhere, but his grandfather didn't care and asked him directly. So he confirmed that Wickham and his mother were coming. On the rooftop at this time, Wickham and Jihook start to talk to each other. The sides of the rock lagoon continued and Jihook landed the first two blows for Wickham. So Wickham confirmed that Wickham and his mother were coming. On the rooftop at this time, Wickham and Jihook start to talk to each other. The sides of the rock lagoon continued and Jihook landed the first two blows for Wickham. He was kicked one more time and as soon as he took the stick and hit Wickham's leg, he rushed his nose and muttered a few words that burned his throat and swung his stick at Wickham's head, causing him to scream in pain. Even so, Wickham still tries to stand firm to continue fighting, but Jihook has too much experience that makes it difficult for him to make ends meet. He inserted a stick into Wickham's neck and said contemptuously, "Anonymous little good guy like you, just go there." His hips were standing on the side and he was cheering to death and he wanted to punch his wife. Jihook continued to press his neck, causing Wickham's face to turn pale and his eyes to fight back. At that moment, Duan rushed over and kicked Jihook backwards. "You said that the matter between me and you was considered Hugh." But before he had time to stand up, he was rushed into by the second graders. Jihook was helped up and stopped the juniors from beating the council anymore because he couldn't bear to look at it. He declared that the first batch was about to die and then rushed to punch Wickham mercilessly. However, our male protagonist still stands firm with the glory of righteousness. The whole group watched with bated breath because one side had a weapon and the other was empty-handed. Yet Wickham still fought to the end. He catches Jahook's stick and announces that he won't buy it anymore, his eyes are itchy. He throws a long blow and then starts a series of blows, making Jahook unable to help. The last blow Wickham punched a shot that flew a full meter, making Junkie look and want to get a replay. Wickham then took Jahook's stick and broke it in half right in front of the crowd. When Wickham started to rush in, the Junkie stood up to block it. You said that beating the council is very cowardly. If you dare to touch it again, I will call the teacher, otherwise I will always call the police. Mr. June looked at Wickham with eyes that were no longer hateful but only respectful. Wickham went to wash his face again in a state of pink breath as if he had just run a marathon without warming up. He didn't need to go to the infirmary but turned to ask who the other two were. It turned out to be the Sungsik and Sunguk of the 3rd grade. When Wickham and Sunguk broke as if they wanted to continue punching each other for the day to get enough combos, Junkie stopped them. Mr. June looked at the other two guys and said, "Don't look for me anymore. I'm bored, and I see that this is not okay at all." You turned to Wickham and let go of a sentence, "You two play with each other, it's too childish, I can't stand it." Meanwhile, the injured man at the end of the bow politely greeted the sick as if he wanted to ask for something related to the fight. Uikom was walking tirelessly up the stairs when Sung-sik suddenly stepped over to help him. Uikom also wondered who this guy was and suddenly cared about him. Sung-sik was going to help Uikom to class. But as soon as he arrived in the hallway, he met the teacher. When he was asked, he answered calmly, "So that I could take you to class, teacher. As for adding chili peppers to the same school, we have to help each other, not make it collective." After speaking, he asked for 10,000 golf because the water was too unbearable. Uikom didn't say anything but helped the money to give it. Sung-sik took the money and left the province as if he had never appeared. That night, Uikom went to the study center again to take the test. But in my mind, I kept repeating the scene of me punching each other with the relics like rewinding memories. The test results, he got 94 points, but he was still scolded for being demoted to the intermediate level, and he was not even at the top of the family. His father looked at the card and told him to focus on it. Don't be distracted. When the male protagonist finished studying more, the Sung-sik were already waiting in front of the center. At first, he also made a drama show that he was friendly and sociable and then invited the goat Uikom to come and go, "I want fight." But Uikom walked over and asked the guy that "You are one of the other two, right?" Sung-sik asked you again, "Is he the guy who used to treat my juniors?" And then looked over and asked what was the reason. Uikom replied definitively, "Always do it here, don't go far." After hearing this, Sung-sik laughed as if he was crazy and said that if he was here, he would definitely not be able to go home. He began to challenge like that in an action movie, and Uikom still stood and watched calmly. The situation was tense like a string when Uikom's father drove to pick him up at the right time. He got into the car and left, leaving the others standing out of rhythm. Your father glanced at those young men and asked if it was your friend? Uikom replied lightly. He must have seen that the uniform was the same, so he just greeted. After that, Uikom was taken to the shop by his father to sew a suit. It turned out that this week was the birthday of the professor who was also his grandfather. They came to ask the head of the Moon department to sew a suit for Uikom to attend. Mr. Moon measured and talked to his father, but then he accidentally mentioned his son. It also made Uikom suppress his smile, as if he had just pulled out an electric second. That night, Uikom was tutored by his father to study math. Then he lay on the bed again, strangling himself in a tired breath. The next morning he stood and looked up at the sky again, but this time there was Junki and some other students. Uikom told Junki about how he met a group of people in front of extra classes. As soon as the two guys arrived, they saw a happy chain waiting with a Coke bottle in their hands as if they were watching. They forced Uikom into the classroom to sit and then surrounded like that, setting up an internal processing session. Sung Chain grabbed the head of Uikom and told him to play with me in a way that invites and presses. He began to sit and talk about the fact that he was the boss of the school that ruled from top to bottom, reading his own personal history. Uikom listened to it and replied that it sounded really loud. But it was just the first child. Sung-sik scratched his head and complimented you on your cunning speech, then took a bottle of Coke and put it on your head and said that this is the drink you bought with your money. Uikom's eyes glanced at Junki angrily, but he just shook his head to signal not to act in a hurry. When Sung-sik left, Junki came and patted him on the shoulder and said that he was very good at suffering. That afternoon, Uikom went with his parents to attend his grandfather's birthday. In this family, everyone follows the tradition of being a doctor and a full doctor. There is nothing missing. Then it started the fight again. What did you do? What did you do? Like a festival to show off your achievements. My grandfather only asked how Uikom was studying at the new school and then said that the school had very poor facilities. Then blamed my parents for changing schools at such an important time. Uikiom's mother tried to speak up for her child, but Uikiom made it clear that she liked the current school, so it was okay. At that time, his father mentioned that the head of the moon department had sent a happy birthday, and his grandfather nodded his head and praised the moon manager as if the story had never happened before. After that, Uikiom sat down to drink wine with his grandfather. He said that with just one phone call, all the lines supplying goods to his father's company would be blocked. Then he asked Uikiom if he knew who that person was. The fisherman replied without fully understanding what he meant. Grandpa immediately invited him to drink. Uikiom refused because he was not old enough, but out of respect, he tried to drink a whole glass. Then the grandfather took a sip of wine and admitted that he was an abuser, because Uikiom's father used to run away from responsibility when he was working there. That is a lesson that must be endured in order to have the right to abuse. He continued to tell Uikiom to go back to study at Seoul Moon School. Just a call to the principal and everything will go away. Uikiom began to be silent because his brother had studied at that school. He looked at him and said that if you go back there, you will probably die. Then he gave a wry smile that made Grandpa let go of a sentence that your father had ruined you, right? When Uikiom went outside, he saw that the sunlight was very bright. His eyes closed, and he suddenly saw his brother appear in front of him. The fisherman walked towards him without realizing that there was a lake in front of him. He fell into the lake in an instant and then struggled in the cold water. Fortunately, his father rushed over and pulled him up. After that, the whole family began to argue when Uikiom's mother got angry because his grandfather had given him alcohol. And the grandfather turned to criticize his weak parents for not being able to teach a child to be kind. After that, Uikiom went to school with eyes that no longer hesitated. He desperately wanted to act despite Junkie's resistance because he loved him and had not fully recovered. Uikiom did not accept being humiliated by the chain, but had to bow his head and retreat. So he rushed straight into his class. Sung Chain was holding a bottle of Coke to drink when he was snatched by Uikiom and poured directly on his head. The water flowed so much that he opened his mouth to grab it like crazy. He smiled secretly and said to go out and deal with it, but what are you doing here? As soon as he walked ahead, he was thrown a bottle directly at his head by Uikiom. An echo made the classroom silent. Sung She turned back with such a crooked smile. The more provoked he was, the more he liked it. He was about to rush in when the teacher walked over in time. He warned that if he still expelled students during the class, he would take a blow from the teacher first. Sung She immediately changed his face and apologized, and then punched him on the back as if no one had ever poured water on his head. He turned around and told Uikiom after going to the music room to deal with each other. Don't forget to blush if you run away. I will deal with you at home. Uikiom and Junki have indeed arrived. Sung She asked what kind of death he wanted, but Uikiom was silent. He turned the Rubik as if he was on the altar and then smiled and said that it was time to go to court. Uikiom said, I came to finish. Sung She nodded and rushed in like a beast. The battle began with a series of punches. Uikiom was initially forced but quickly counterattacked. He punched him and then squeezed his neck. Sung Chain tried to get up and then suddenly counterattacked, strangling so hard that Uikiom heard his breath. His face turned pale and his eyes began to fade. Junki outside shouted loudly, wake up, don't collapse here. In his mind, an old image flashed when someone put his hand on it and then strangled him without letting go. He tried to move, but then he stopped, shrouding away in the laughter and laughter of the thrill. He wished him a good night's sleep and also said that he would be responsible for him. Then he turned to point at the next one, Junki. Sung Sich said that he was also interested in Junki. He followed Junki, abandoned Uikiom, and then followed his side. However, Junki said that although he was cowardly, he did not leave his friends. Then he opened his glasses and was ready to fight with the spear. Sung Chain's face was excited to fight, but suddenly Uikiom began to cough like that and came back to life. His eyes angrily declared that if Sung Chain dared to strangle him again, Sung Chain would surely die. Sung Sich looked at Junki and said, wait for me a little longer. And Junki smiled happily because his friend was resurrected. The two of them began to fade, punching and kicking with heat. Sung Si quickly grabbed him and strangled him. The male protagonist was strangled and tried to escape again. The comrades said don't strangle anymore, but if there is a mark, suddenly Uikiom has taken the leg of the object and got the chain again. He took the position and punched him repeatedly. Blood was flowing from his nose. The original Fig saw that and began to want to go in and out. Junki saw that he was playing solo and wanted to take a lotus, so he kicked him out. Then Junki announces to Uikiom that now I handle one guy and you handle one guy. The original Sung got angry and asked who to deal with whom, and Junki declared that I would deal with you. Sung Uikom came out and began to look crazy and gave the stage back to Junki and Sung Original. New Junki has punched the root fig and the chief is fresh. The two guys sat while wiping the blood from their noses and craving. The root figs were squeezed back and forth by Junki. He let the island go until Junki threw a final step that caused the root of the fig to collapse and the chain burst out laughing. Sung Si smiled at the original fig because he had lost to a child, and then he came back with his bloody face to the brim Uikom. He was hit in the head by the chief because he kept playing the game of strangling, and when he fell, Uikom wanted to strike him but he was lying under him and dodged. Then the sausage kept his legs, sat in the row and talked about playing the game of crushing the body. He pressed down and held his hand, wanting to break his arm because if his arm was badly broken, it would be very difficult to operate, and he screamed in pain and tried to get out of it. He was able to get up and then kicked the chain in the face. The chain was kicked in pain, so he hugged his face, then the Kiom threw a foot at the chain in the face and then he was stunned. Not stopping there, our male protagonist strangled until he couldn't breathe anymore and fainted. With his sore hand, Uiki hugged it and warned the third graders not to be bad from now on, and then he went out first, leaving Junki standing and laughing. When he went out, he saw the plane flying high in the sky and he looked up at it passing by quickly. Moving to Uikom's mother, who was going for a psychological examination, she couldn't accept that she was like this forever, and then she asked the doctor to help her. So the doctor advised the male lead's mother to face her fearful feelings. So she stood in front of the door of my room and opened it like that, bravely facing reality to move forward. She slowly entered my room. The room was dark and empty, so she pulled the curtains up, then gently stepped deeper inside and saw a photo of the two brothers placed on the table. Meanwhile, Uikom and his friend Junki were standing there washing the bloodstains and using foundation to cover the bruises. Junki was glad that he didn't have to look at the sloppy Zukan guys anymore. He could concentrate on his studies without being disturbed, but he didn't say anything but just looked dimly at the sky. After that, Uikom started jogging to practice and then practiced punching and kicking as if he was preparing for something, but it turned out that it was just a thought while he was sitting in math class. He was reminded by the teacher for not doing his homework and kept distracting, and then the teacher did the same trick of pressing his head as his father used to do. So Uikom held his teacher's hand and then he started scolding. He thinks that now you are chaotic and opposed, learning is your life, I only teach. He also said that if you don't want to study, go out, so you got up and left. Coming home, of course, he was scolded by his father for that crime. He constantly shouted at Kiom. So he said, the teacher told me to go out, so I just left. And Kiom also said that my father told me to take the initiative, so I wanted to learn on my own. So the father got angry and thought that he was hiding. Then he announced that he would call the center, and the second Kiom had to go there to apologize and continue studying. He pointed his finger at his son's face and shouted that absolutely don't let this happen again from now on. Uikom didn't know what to say except to let the story pass. When the father went out, he saw his mother standing silently looking into the room. Then Kiom put his hands on his ears and once again strangled himself. Uikom went out to meet Junki, who was eating ice cream. Junki asked Kiom what was the matter with him that looked so serious. But he just laughed and said there was nothing wrong, but his face was upside down and open as if he wanted to stick out. The kind of thing between me and you has just begun. And then Junki opened the phone and divided it. He knew very well that Kiom had studied at his old school, Seoul Moon. So he brought out the Zophie bank of the boy who was in the second grade of Seoul Moon School. In it, the scene of the pig bullying others was secretly filmed. The clip clearly recorded the scene of this guy pouring excess water on his classmates coldly. In the story, Junki cursed him not as much as a dog, but his father covered everything up because he was a medical school professor, so his power was not medium. Junki invites Uikom to catch the pig upside down and judges that Kiom definitely likes to do this, kind of a noble job. Punishing the bad guys, the two of them named this case a campaign to punish the weak. At that moment, Uikom's father called, so Junki snatched the phone and said that in addition to what your father told you to do, you have to do what you want. Kiom cursed, and you were crazy, so Junki challenged you to dare to hit me. Uikom's face was tense like a rope, so Junki apologized and returned the phone to him. When Uikom left, a young man held out a bucket of water to thank him. It turned out that this was a second grader at the same school. After the incident of beating the cardinal the day before, they didn't dare to bully him anymore, so he came to thank his benefactor. Seeing that, Junki stood by and smiled and said that the kind of idiots who stand at the top of the school like Uikom have no compassion. They beat to die after tired school, listened to their father's words, and didn't love anyone, and then Junki chased that young man away. Closing one more sentence, I must have looked at the wrong person. After hearing those words, Uikom didn't say anything and quietly left. That night, Uikom was taken by his father to meet the professors so that tomorrow the road of study and fame will be covered with a red carpet. The children of their family are also studying for the medical school exam, and they have already passed. The father said that you should go there and make friends and learn from the experience. Seeing his child obedient, he smiled brightly as if he had just received a Harvard scholarship. He met both the director and the director of the center, an elderly middle-aged woman with a cute daughter who was easy to marry. Here, all people have blood in the academic world. Then there was a professor who introduced his son as a male pig. This guy shook hands as if he was campaigning for the student general council. Who would have thought that behind that moral appearance was a person who used to pour boiling water on his classmates? What's more shocking is that it has also won an award and then appeared on TV. Talking about how he used to have an injury in his leg, he came up with the idea of a smart wheelchair for people with disabilities. After listening, everyone admired and said that this guy is the right kind of guy who learns to buy and is good at studying. Then Oh Ki-om was introduced to the pig, but instead of shaking hands, he asked directly, "How are you now?" Because Song Boom is a victim of pigs. The question made the pig stunned as if he had been kicked around the bridge. Ki-om also added another blow to the school violence case that he was involved in. The father heard that it was just a rumor. Then Oh Ki-om just let go of the sentence. There was another video. "But Dad, does it sound reasonable for a person to put pressure on people with disabilities but make others disabled?" The father saw the problem, so he dragged the Ki-om out of that place. Meanwhile, Ki-om's mother is telling the psychiatrist about her eldest son committing suicide in that room. His mother was frustrated because she didn't understand the distress signals her son had left behind, and that regret will follow her for the rest of her life. Below, Oh Ki-om was scolded and slapped by his father for speaking in a rebellious manner. He tried to explain to his father, but he didn't listen. He also said that talented people have to suffer from rumors, but they want to live cleanly. Then he told his son to study pig upside down. Don't run after this and that cause anymore, even force Oh Ki-om to come back and apologize to the pig. But he replied that he didn't want to be a rotten person in the middle like that. "I don't want to be like my brother." Hearing that, the father blushed angrily and slapped Oh Ki-om once, because his son dared to argue with him today, so he left. Within his mind the unquenched pain of his brother who committed suicide just a month after passing the doctor's degree, and left in his mother's heart a wound that could not be healed. That night the family of 3 had a place for each of them. Oh Ki-om sat alone at the bus stop like a disoriented. When it rained, he didn't bother to walk in the rain as if he was drifting away with his thoughts. Finally he stopped in front of the junkie's house. He wanted to invite his friend to go catch pigs upside down. Meanwhile, in another place, the pig and his accomplices were looking for a new object to bully. The victim was hiding in the toilet this time. It's a good idea. When he was pulled out, Dunggan was punched in the head by a pig, causing him to fall down. That night, Dunggan climbed to the rooftop, standing by the side, rolling with a desperate look that wanted to end it all. But in the end, he didn't dance. He could only hug his face and cry like a broken man, but the tragedy did not stop. Dunggan was then taken away by the pigs face down, and they beat his counsel so much that they couldn't stand. The more they avoided, the harder they hit them, as if they were hitting them for pleasure, not for their faces. And then, in the midst of that, in the cold, dark scene, 2 red-masked shadows came out of the corridor like 2 ghosts. It was Junkie and Wikyong, and the 2 of them appeared to teach those bastards an unforgettable lesson. Junji squeezed out and asked if the male needle was here. "Ah, he's bullying you here." So Wimmeror and Junji split up together to find out the names of these school bears. Junji takes a 34 card. As for the mirror, it is given to the more difficult person than the man. This guy is not the type of man who was just right when he learned to be a man. It causes the urination to be constantly urinated on the person and hurts. Seeing that my friend is a little difficult, Junji decided to tell Wimmeror to deal with the juniors. As for this name of learning Thai martial arts, leave it to me. All this time he was just a referee and spoke. But since he was born for the role, Junji is even better at boxing than Uigong. The name of the man was quickly controlled by Junji. Used the same move as the male hole to hit him. But it wasn't long before he went to beat him back. Wimmeror and Junji keep swapping. Together they wear down the fighting power of the male hole until Wimmeror remembers the moves he copied from Sungjun. He punched this man who couldn't help in time and finished him off with a fierce spinning kick. After finishing his work, Junji stopped the mirror. Tell him to take out his phone and record this moment. Junji forces the boy to apologize to the friend he is bullying. How easy is it? Making the man apologize is only a part. The other part was to record the video of him being insulted. Junji turned to tell the other friend that wouldn't it be too easy if he just hit the victim and apologized? You can't forgive him, right? No one can ask the victim to forgive him. Instead, the only way he should heal is to fight back against the person who beat him. The friend who was bullied heard that immediately let the male hole break through. He must have doubted his life because he was now beaten back by a bully. After the conversation, the two of them happily sat down and drank some alcoholic drinks. Feel mentally more relaxed than ever, Junji asked the mirror to send him the video from earlier. Think about what to name this video, don't know? Just when you are tired, you can review these things. You will probably be more mentally motivated. Now congratulations on the launch of the School Warrior Squad. After changing clothes, Junji was a little hungry and asked Wimmeror if he didn't want to go out to eat. The exam prep school couldn't contact your father anymore. But now it's time after school, so Wimmeror also has to go back to tell his friend Junji about starving to death alone. At the hospital at this time, I also know, from the beginning until now, this Junji friend wanted to have someone who was good at boxing like him, or had as much blood as possible. It's all just to get revenge on them one by one because his best friend is a victim of the bullies at the soul school they want. Junji tells his best friend that he will take revenge one by one. I just hope that my brother will be safe soon. But Junji didn't know that his best friend had also reacted after hearing him tell the story. The next day, when I finished the exam in class, Junji immediately went to find the Wimmeror and said that a new target had been determined. So the two of them immediately left the class when they found 3 names that used to be the head of a 10th grade bear quarreling. The red guy screams if he doesn't listen to the seniors of grade 11. He will be forced to take the gun away. Every crime is now retired, so he just takes care of himself. Hearing this, Wigyeong walked over and told the beloved Hongyin to convey the word to G-Blood that if I touched the Sungjun again, I wouldn't ignore it. The other two just squeezed their buttocks and left for fear of being punched. At the school department at this time, a new transfer student was asked to move here. For him, this is the last chance to study at a normal school. The teacher warned this new student to behave properly while at this school. Because if he is expelled again, this friend's academic life is considered to be open. As a grade 12 student who has just moved in and doesn't want anyone to notice. But the hat he chased in made him stand out from the others. Coincidentally, this newcomer is in the same class as the big boy of the Sungsik Boys School. Not to mention sitting in his seat. Everyone also began to be curious about the identity of this friend. Nam Sungsik had just arrived when he saw that someone had taken his place. Come over and ask if you are a new transfer student? After asking, he said that this was his place. Please invite him to leave for however. Since you took my place, I was a little sad. I've been running out of money lately, so can you please give me some money to spend? Knowing that the newcomer has been targeted for bullying, this transfer student also took out the money but drowned with Sungsik. I can tell you that you want money, but I need quiet. Sungsik immediately agreed. Then you can give me 100,000 won in insurance premiums every week. Seeing that this new student did not give me money, Sungsik starts to rush and wants to cause trouble but can't punch anything. Thus, every movement was read by this stranger. The new student wants to stop, but Sungsik still refuses, until he was thrown out and the teacher came to warn him. Calling the two to the principal's office, Sungsik refused to stop. Bao was lucky this time to be aggressive with this new student's name. Sungsik called his beloved brother to come. Tell him to go to Junji to cause a fight. So this cute junior came to class and told Junji. He said that there was a barehead guy who had just transferred to a school for less than a day and wanted to fight Sungsik. Hearing that, Ui Sword immediately went to meet the brother with Jijuan without knowing that he was trapped. When he arrived at the 12th grade, Junji knew who the stranger in this class was just by looking. He said that if this transfer brother wanted to be a bunch instead of looking for that male Sungsik. Look for the sword needle here. So this 12th grade senior called the two people to the rooftop to explain. Looking at this senior's nameplate, Junji immediately realized that this was Lee Jongjae of Mumyang School. Hui wondered, there seemed to be some misunderstanding here. I just wanted to block the Sungsik's attacks. Ui Sword seemed to be insane by his own justice. Asks to rush into a fight with Jongjae. But after a few attacks, none of them were hit. Junji immediately realized that this 12th grade brother was really not a simple person. Immediately stopped the sword and apologized to the seniors. If it is not prevented, the sword will soon be eaten by the onion in one battle. He realized that this brother really had no intention of causing any trouble in this case. But the sword Ui didn't think that this new person was a good person. Seeing that the junior layer smelled a little hot-tempered, Zhang Jie asks his sword how he defines a bad person. Those who start a war are always the ones who end badly. Try to realize that sooner. Ui Sword wondered if this guy was really very strong. Junji just said that even if there are 10 guys here, they are nothing compared to this Zhang Jie. And the Love Red guy came back to report with the name of the booming oligarch. He was a little disappointed because he thought this new student would be interesting. Who's just a guy is not interesting at all. Junji begins to lecture about the secret school that Zhang Jie used to attend. There used to be too many juvenile crimes and detention centers that couldn't solve them all. That mysterious school gathered all the bad guys together and carried out an experiment. Instead of teaching, the teachers there encouraged fighting. If you don't dare to stand up and fight in that school, the result for the weak will be exploitation and desecration. But if Zhang Jie is transferred from that school to a school like this one, there is one thing that Junji is sure of. Zhang Jie has dominated that B-Noodle school and is the strongest. As he was excitedly talking, Junji discovered that the 12th graders were following Zhang Jie. The main purpose is to bully and deal with this new transfer student. Out of curiosity about how strong Zhang Jie is, Junji immediately lures the sword to run after him, but he leans over there. After chasing the new student to an alley, Zhang Jie seemed to be standing here and carrying this bunch of cat heads to the place just to deal with one thing. Zhang Jie still gives this guy a chance, telling him that this should stop, but he doesn't want to. He couldn't let go of his anger in the morning, so he also rushed into a fight with Zhang Jie. Each crime only needed to eat a few punches to lie down. His best friend saw this and rushed in, and the result was no different from what his best friend did. It's true that idiots often play with each other. Zhang Jie warns that if the other guys don't want to be as disabled as these two, it's best to stand still and leave. But after walking for a while, Junji ran to compliment the senior, which was really the best, so it was convenient to ask the senior in the future when needed. Can you help me write once? Junji just wanted to negotiate and ran away, not letting the new senior refuse a word. And the US word at the exam preparation center was forever distracted by the words of this new transfer student. How do you define a bad guy? You try to think about whether I am a good person or a bad person. Because of his recent distractions, when he came home, he was slapped by his father just because his recent test was not very good. Not only that, but she also deliberately skipped school. Wiegum's mother felt that it was enough and did not want her child to be abused again. Standing up and saying that this way of teaching his children is a mistake. Does this kind of punishment make things better or just make your child's condition worse? My mother's words made me feel like I was getting closer and closer to my own limit than before. At night, under a bridge at this time, the second person in the Junji's words was named Kijin. Another thug is also bullying his friends and blackmailing the nerds. He didn't know that his number would be beaten by strange school warriors. Junji up here shouted loudly, saying that we were going to come and play with the boys. So the two rushed up with a kick and called the two fat friends to quickly hide. And we rushed to deal with the barehead guys. It could be said that the barehead group looked easier to breathe than the male group this time. One by one, they were knocked out like children by Uisword and Jijuan. The two fat friends who were bullied even took out their phones to turn around. It looks like the school warrior is cool. Suddenly, at this time, Uisword seemed to be mad and punched the leader of the bullies. Every punch he punched like that wanted to release all the tension he had been under so far. It was almost out of control when he saw that Uisword was going crazy. Junji had beaten him back, but Wiegum refused, wanting these bullies to be punished appropriately. It's better to die as a bad guy. Junji feels like Uisword has turned into a different person now, using the bad guys just to relieve their own pressure. So much so that he was going to take the stick and kill this bear's head. Junji tried to retract his sword, saying that he couldn't be a bastard like these bastards. After dealing with the bullies, Junji asks Wiegum if he ever wants to smoke. Although it hurts his lungs, it is quite helpful to relieve pressure. Uisword honestly said that he had intended to smoke it earlier. When he seems to be out of control, this makes Junji feel quite worried. Uisword said that he was the one who said these things. We have to punish the bad guys, so that's why I did that. Suddenly, Junji receives a call from his D, informing him that he himself has regained consciousness at the hospital. So Junji quickly went to the hospital to meet herself and sobbed. Ask why he slept so long. Thank God that you are awake. Now we also know what Junji's original purpose was when he invited Uisword to form a group of school warriors. He wanted to use the Uisword to be able to take revenge on all 4 people who had bullied him. Currently, there are only 2 more children left in this group. On the way back, He heard the conversation of the students. Recently, there was a group of 2 masked people who were gradually quelling the bullies at Seoul Moon School. I wish these people had come to get rid of the bullies at my school, and it would be good to stay at the sword house right now. His father had returned and was planning to have someone clean the Uisword's room. But his mother didn't want it because it was a place for her eldest son's belongings. The father thought that because of his brother's influence, he had such a reduced result now. Wiegum's mother said that he never cared about his son, but only knew his grades. There were recent bruises on his face that he hadn't even noticed. Hearing this, the father was surprised, and just when the sword came back, he stopped him and told him, "Give me that music player." He thinks that it is because of this broken music player that he is getting worse and worse. But that was just one reason he came up with. Uisword didn't hear and went to the room, saying that this thing was his brother's relic. "Are you wanting me to follow in his footsteps? What did you do wrong? Do you know why your brother likes this broken music player?" He said that just by putting this thing on, he would be freed from the pressure caused by his father. "You want hear the voice from your father again." He shouted only because he was a coward, so he couldn't stand it and stood firm. Uisword said that his father was the cause of his brother's death. Uisword's brother had lost control just like him. But because there is no place to release all the pressure, it was he who chose to cut off his brother's neck, so now every time Uisword is under pressure, he also had to do exactly the same as his brother at that time. Uisword is like an airplane that wants to find freedom. But the father was the cause of the failure of that free plane, and leading to disorientation and then ending their journey. The next day, Uisword and Junji go to meet the third person in the group of 4 people that Junji needs to deal with. He reminded the Uisword this time not to lose control like last time, but to be careful, because the current 2 children are not like the bullies who go to beat others. When he enters the abandoned restaurant, he meets the bullies of the multi-year high school. The head excitedly told the masked guys to come. It seems that these bullies have received information from the person they are bullying. The current situation for Uisword and Junji isn't quite right. But because they are fearless warriors, the 2 decided to turn their backs on each other and separate. The beauty of each guy is different from the male protagonists of other movies 1 £10. This movie is more realistic because how can the 2 of them weigh a bunch of guys with weapons? Uisword and Junji should be quickly dissuaded by the juniors of the lipstick. Let me see who the guy behind this mask is. He didn't expect that the person in front of him was an acquaintance that year. It made him feel like he was offended and went mad, curious more about who the other one is. The leader took off the mask of the sword and saw that he had no acquaintance. "Who are you?" Standing in front of the camera, the sword said that we were school warriors. Why is it easy to deal with them one by one? Meanwhile, this Junji is also challenging. "Come here, Dodi." He got mad and took a fire extinguisher and attacked him, but he couldn't hit us once. That's how he kicked him in a whirlwind. In order to escape from these people, Junji threw the window and called the Uisword. The 2 quickly ran away under the tail of the longtime chief bears. Fortunately, on the way to escape, coincidentally, Sung Jun's friend was running nearby and came to save 2 people. It was a triple pinch that helped Uisword and Junji escape from this multi-year leader. After escaping, Wiegum asks you if you want me to participate in the purges just because of your revenge. Not wanting to have anything to do with Junji anymore, Uisword called Sung Jun back. Ask him if he can give him a night's sleep, because if I go home like this, my family will panic. Seeing Uisword begging, Sung Jun also took him back to his home. The first time he came to Sung Jun's house, Uisword was also surprised because he didn't think this guy would be the one who won so many boxing awards. In the last fight, if it wasn't for me risking my life, I wouldn't have been able to win Sung Jun. Sung Jun advises Wiegum not to come into contact with Junji anymore but to return to being a hard student. Only wear your wrist to listen and be at the top of every test. When he started fighting, he just continued to do it. Sung Jun just talked about the past when he also started learning boxing. After a while, boxing becomes like a second habit that cannot be abandoned. Then he would punch not for a reason anymore but because it had become a habit. It's like the sword peels itself every time it's under pressure from studying. Uisword admits that Sung Jun is actually not a quiet person, but a person who talks a lot. It's quite different from when I was at school when I was a bear's head. While he was talking, Uisword's father continued to call, but he didn't listen and turned off the power. Just send him a message that he will sleep at your house. He apologized to the teacher for inviting him to come today, but his son did not come back. I just have to ask you to come here tomorrow. Meanwhile, the leader of the F4 Association on this side is laughing at the monkey because of the video recorded. The passage where the two sword-wielding people were arrested and shouted that they were school warriors. The Jisoo still despised the other three, and he didn't know why he was being like this by 210-story guys. It's really a loss of face. However, Uisword's face made Jisoo wonder if he had anything to do with the four of them except Junji. Nam Ho just said that it was not really related, but he had met him at his father's class meeting. The new Jisoo said that only things about boxing like this would come to me. If so, quickly become a doctor like your father and help me in the future. Jisoo also announces the names of Junji's best friends. Jisung has also regained consciousness. It seems that Jisung was also a good student but was beaten by these bullies and left disabled and hospitalized. The masked guy who reported back to Jisoo had already found the whereabouts of these masked guys. I heard that Junji had come to Jeonsong. The next day, Junji feels like he has put Uisword in his best friend's revenge plan. But he didn't know that the barehead Jisoo would come here today to liquidate the disciples. He went to Sungsik's basketball room. Asked the junior if he knows where Junji is, but this friend doesn't know. Just when Sungsik returns, he wonders why there is a strange-looking guy here bullying his juniors. Jisoo turns around and asks Sungsik if he knows where Junji is. Sungsik says if you give me 50,000 won, I'll tell you. For each crime, instead of getting 50,000 won, he immediately ate the kick for 50,000 won. Seeing the barehead guy in front of him was quite itchy. Sungsik decides to go a few ways with him, but each crime doesn't get punished. Even so, Jisoo punched her back so that her teeth and lips were confused. Sungsik begins to play a weak game and lies down on the ground, taking the opportunity to grab Jisoo's leg and try to break his leg. Jisoo asked you to take it out, I said it hurts, damn it. Sungsik, because he didn't listen, was also turned over by him. Breaking the Sungsik's mask violently, he cried out, I told you it hurt, bastard. It's convenient for a younger brother to call Junji and Uisword to come here. When he arrived, seeing this rather strange barehead name, Wiegum was about to go forward to test his strength, but he was stopped by Junji. Tell me to do my own thing, you let me handle it myself. Back in middle school, Junji and his best friend Jisung were always bullied in school just because they were weak. The bareheads forced Jisung and Junji to join them as juniors, but the two of them refuse. The result was nothing but that they were both eaten onions. Suddenly, Jisung walked out of nowhere, tried some Brazilian kicking techniques he had just learned online with Jisung, treating him as a sandbag to try his tricks. At this time, Kim Namho stood up, forcing Jisung to give himself 100,000 won per week in security money. Jisung didn't listen, didn't want to give the money, and was strangled by the barehead name. One by one, they gave the two of them a surplus of life and death even though they were eaten and beaten. The two of them were still straightforward as if nothing had happened, still laughing and talking to each other to see who could take the blow better. But the bullying wasn't over yet, and Jisung and Junji were arrested again. The reason is because the two of them were hanging out when they were caught by these bullies. They asked why they had money to go out but didn't have money to pay the insurance, and the bully forced the two of them to bring out all the money. No matter how much you give, Junji only has more than 24,000 won, and his best friend Jisung doesn't have any money in him. Of course, he was also dragged out by the soldiers because he didn't have any money, and the Jisoo now told Junji to leave. Although he was a little surprised, Junji also followed suit. I thought they were both released, but no, because Jisung's friend didn't have any money, only Junji was allowed to leave. Although he was not resigned, his friend said it was okay, everything would be fine, and Junji obediently walked straight home without trying to turn his head. His footsteps suddenly slowed down as if he felt separated from his friend. Junji decided to go back to save Jisung, but it was too late. Jisoo's bullies, who don't know whether to be intentional or excessive, let Jisung fall from the 4th floor of the school to the ground. That's why Junji is currently asking Wiegum to let herself handle her own affairs. However, as a longtime bully, Junji can only fight back a few weak ones because this Jisoo is quite sluggish. Not only that, but he also fights and releases extremely. With just a few light hits, Junji seemed to have lost all his strength. Jisoo starts to turn to look at Wiegum, saying that I actually came here because I'm curious about the superhero named Wiegum here. Why do you always beat up my brothers? Was it because this guy was asking for revenge or what? Wiegum didn't care about the matter between the two of them. He only knew that this Jisoo deserved to be punched. Unlike the previous episodes, this time Wiegum was eaten quite a lot, although there were a few counterattacks. But the punches didn't make this Mo Jisoo think. As a result, he was kicked and beaten to the bone of his right arm, causing Wigyum to lie on the ground in pain. Seeing his friend being beaten to death, Junji could only sit helplessly and watch, until Wigyum was almost covered by him with the guitar to smash the guitar of singer Kwangle. The mysterious senior of the 12th grade also appeared and told Jisoo to stop this, and Jisoo looked at him and immediately recognized the acquaintance in front of him. But with a personality that is close to the chicken house, Jisoo only makes an appointment to meet Ganj later, conveniently carrying Wigyum's music tape as a trophy. Ganj advises the two Wigyum to stop this, but Junji's revenge story should end here in the rain. Wigyum remembers that in the past, Sujium's older brother was always beaten and suppressed by his father about his studies, just because he was obsessed with failures, and he didn't want Sujium to have to look at other people like him. It was also the beginning of Sujium going to find Wigyum to relieve all the stress after every class, until he was knocked off by Wigyum and regained his composure. At that time, Sujium almost forgot that she was torturing her younger brother. But his mother only knew how to tell her son that everything would be okay because the college competition was almost over. But every time she wears that listening hand, Sujium accidentally hurts Wigyum, causing her father to notice. But he is the one who only cares about his grades, so he only knows how to tell Wigyum to be patient with his brother, until Sujium really falls into Soul Moon. Wigyum feels extremely proud of her brother, but after a while, Sujium comes to her mother, saying that she wants to drop out of school, but she refuses to notice. That night when Wigyum was getting ready to go to bed, his brother walked in, thinking that he would continue to be a little angry with him today. Sujium just wants to give him a broken music player today, saying that as long as he puts on this headset, Wigyum will be able to reach the world where there is no father. He also apologizes to Wigyum for always tormenting his younger brother all this time, and after those words, Sujium committed suicide. After regaining consciousness to find himself lying in the hospital, the father keeps asking who did this. "I'm going to put him in jail," and then turned to criticizing Junji. Wigyum bluntly replied that the bully was none other than Kim Namhak. "I've already defeated that guy because he's a bully and blackmailer, but he was the son of the doctor in charge of the hospital that his father was running. Can Dad really put him in jail?" After her parents leave, Wigyum confides in her friend Junji that she really wants to defeat those bullies. Now, Wigyum considers those bullies to be the target of his attacks whenever he feels unhappy, but Junji doesn't want him to get involved anymore, advising Wigyum to stop this. The next day while at school, Junji sees Wigyum's father coming out of the school, making him curious to chase after him. When he asked, he learned that after Wigyum was discharged from the hospital, he planned to take him to the United States to study at Boston School. This started to make Junji think about how to draw Wigyum into this way of boxing from the beginning. His friend Sung Jun asks if he is happy to make Wigyum such a person. "Are you still his friend?" Junji didn't know how to respond either. After visiting his best friend Ji-sung, who was anxiously wondering when his friend woke up, Ji-sung asked who he was. Seeing Junji's skinny expression made Ji-sung can't help but laugh. "It's true that this guy is still as stupid as ever. Junji just asked you if you weren't angry because I made you like this?" Ji-sung said that this was not his fault, but that the Bears had bet with each other that year. If Junji came back, he would punch him once to protect his best friend at that time. Ji-sung had stopped Ji-sung, and he was also pressed against the railing, and the whole group immediately got excited to take him to sit on the work table, and then began to gradually release his hands, but because he was joking too much, he deliberately did more. It was Ji-sung who had caused his friend Ji-sung to be hospitalized until now, and he had also heard that Junji had gone to the police station to report it. The more witnesses Ji-sung, he asked to denounce that bullying group. Maybe the parents of the related Kim Namhak have power. But with the testimony and the victim here, this is worth trying, and the example in the current hospital. He began to see his brother appear next to him, but he didn't say a word. Leaving the hospital room curiously, he ran after him through the corridors. Then on the rooftop, his mother felt that something was wrong, so she tried to go to the mirror. I only saw that he was currently sitting on the terrace railing. Somewhere next to the Nana, there was also the figure of the deceased eldest son of the mirror. The current mirror tells her mother that she understands her brother's feelings, causing her to panic and admit that she is sorry to know that her two children are both suffering and cannot do anything. But she hopes that she can persevere. The loss of her role makes her afraid that because of herself, she will also lose her other child. "Just because I was too loving and couldn't do anything, seeing my mother suffering, I could only sit there and blame myself." Wimmeror also didn't decide to jump down like his brother anymore, so he wanted his brother to take care of his mother rather than leave her in this world alone. But as soon as he brought the mirror back to his room, his father pulled the mirror back and told him that in the near future, after being discharged from the hospital, he would be sent to the United States to study abroad at Boston School. It's all for the sake of her son, the exam teacher said, but the mother can't let something like this continue to happen. She called her husband out, telling him that they had almost lost their son earlier. The father was only surprised, asking why he did this, but he was still unaware that he was the one who caused the death of his eldest son. His wife announced that she would be the one to take care of the mirror this time. The next day, when he arrives at school, his brother, who is hidden in the 12th grade, is blocked by Jesus Jr.'s. Looking at it, he knew that this handicap would definitely have to fight, so Ganj didn't say much. Running away was the most important thing. But when they came to an alley, these people were bored with life and blocked his way, so it was okay to exercise a little in the morning to make him healthy. The guys in the alley were quickly knocked out, but after running a little longer, Ganj was stopped by Jesus' two best friends. Tell the people behind you not to do anything to test the strength of this guy in the hat. The two guys who didn't rush up on their own only made sandbags for Ganj, and suddenly one guy let the two guys play evenly. Ganj was stunned, and then he also had a tight shoulder. Although my head was bleeding with a tight shoulder with just one hand, none of these guys would play with me again. Not ashamed to be one of the leaders of the Mumyong Bear, after running away from these groups, the name of the oligarch Jisoo also appeared. It's true that the coward-headed bears only know how to take advantage of people's injured children to beat the council, and they don't accept why they live so long. This Jisoo, because he heard rumors about Ganji's ability, he wanted to try solo with him. Of course, Ganja didn't mind. The name Jisoo rushed in and slapped your shoulder. Okay, he played dirty and punched the injured shoulder joint repeatedly. Asked why he stopped me last time, and was about to play dirty with Ganj, Jisoo was punched by him to learn blood. Knowing that I am a disciple of Yang is too bastard. He quickly pinched the head of the Jisoo groping head, causing him to suffocate with all his strength. But suddenly this guy was like a reflection of light, bounced back and fell backwards. Although she was a little distorted by being beaten, bullying someone who was injured naked was really enjoyable for Jisoo. Currently, Weegum has also moved out separately with his mother. His mother told him that from now on, only I care about you, so laugh a lot and think about what you want. You don't need to care about things like grades, just know what you want. As for the father, after returning home, there was only a garden scene without an empty house. After being defeated by Jisoo, Junji also learns the news and visits his senior brother. Ganja asked him if he was happy to see me like this. Have you ever heard of the law of total violence? Violence will always strike back at its creators, so it is only natural. Ganj said he used violence against many other people. Although he tried not to use it anymore, it seemed that things like this would not end anytime soon. By the way, Junji was here, and he also asked how the situation was with the guy who was wearing his gloves. After hearing the words of the 12th grade senior, Junji starts like a faint person. Start thinking about the consequences that you have on the mirror. As for the current mirror, he is being taken by his mother to heal, interested in asking him if his son has a girlfriend. Except for a handsome face like her child, she believes that the ability to look in the mirror will be very picky. She also inquires about Junji to see if this friend also has a girlfriend. Have the two of you had any contact with each other recently, but you don't know how to respond? Recalling my memories of the mirror. From a hardworking student to a school warrior like now. If he had caused this with his own hands, Junji had also decided that he would solve this case. The only thing he could do now was to go and seduce the guy who had bullied him. Ask Jisoo for the Wimmer's music player to come back. He asked Junji if he knew that this machine was broken, right? Junji was also curious as to why Wimmeror was always wearing this broken music player, but what he was most interested in was how he could get this item back. So the Jisoo said, if you can defeat me, I'll give this item back to the mirror. Junji didn't say much and started to rush in and hit Jisoo like that he had been holding back for a long time. Seeing this name keeps joking with me. Junji gave him a jaw stroke that drove him crazy. He'll beat you until you get down on your knees and beg for forgiveness. You can even hit a few shots just now. But Junji standing in front of the school worm was like that and lost all his strength. However, he also tried his best to fight back. It's just that he was soon killed by this Jisoo Bearhead guy in a scumbag. He asked what was the name of your best friend? Jasung, right? He also knew that Junji's friend had woken up, so he told him to try harder. Then he continued to rush at Chin Junji to the point of losing his face ID. After Weegum returned home with his mother, how long has his grandfather called the police here? He said that his daughter-in-law was mentally ill, so he brought his grandson here and did not let him go to school. Weegum's mother suddenly had difficulty breathing, which made him worried, The police were about to arrest her when the father cried out, "Tell your mother that she is mentally ill and needs treatment, so listen to her." His mother also said that he was fine, but she will call her lawyer to ask for a measure to protect herself. Urging him to hurry up and save himself from the police encirclement, his mother promised to go out soon to rescue Wiegum, and then left voluntarily. The new father approached and told Wiegum that if she was treated, she would be better. For the current Wiegum, maybe the father here is the one who needs to go for psychological treatment. And Junji after being killed in a battle of the gods. He also succeeded in returning the name Jisu to the listening hand he needed, then laughed in great pain on the way back. Wiegum was always reminded by him, the blame is that he has a pair of parents who are extremely new for him to fall into a bad learning environment. The grandfather wanted Wiegum to stay at his house until he finished his studies, but Wiegum did not care. Directly listening to Junji's phone, he curiously asks who it is. Wiegum said that he was just a friend. Without leaving the car, he ran in front of the helplessness of his grandfather and father, and went to meet Junji. Seeing that his friend was a little devastated, but because he was a school superhero team, Junji told him that he was fine. He heard that Wiegum was going abroad, so he tried to get the music player back for Wiegum. Not knowing when he will see this friend again, Junji asks Wiegum to be careful. Not to mention that he has also fixed the music player according to the instructions on YouTube. Admitting that since the appearance of Wiegum, Junji says that he can do quite a bit more than before. After putting on the headset that had been fixed, Wiegum could now feel the lyrics that his brother had told him before. Listen to everything with your heart, only then will you be aware of yourself living to end all this. Wiegum had been waiting for Jisu's name at his school since early in the morning. Meanwhile, Wiegum's father was also waiting for him at school but only saw his friend Junji. After seeing Wiegum standing at his school, Jisu called him a superhero. I didn't know where he was standing here. Wiegum just asked, where are you going to go as a student? Perfect students should go to school, right? To teach this name a lesson. Although his hand was still in a cast, Wiegum still liked to fight, but because of the combat strength of experience. Wiegum was also punched by this guy. Fortunately, he had been given him a jaw force, and he had to admit that the guys of the school like to twist Jisu's beak. Wiegum is quickly kicked by Jisu like a child. In order to support him, he took advantage of the hand of the bandage to make him feel like he was out of the rock, which she was in pain. Then the two continued to run out to the middle of the road and rolled together. The surrounding students lined up to cheer for Jisu. He went to challenge Wiegum and was given a painful suck. Jisu quickly counterattacked, shouting that Wiegum is indeed a dog. Hey superhero, are you only so good? Do you know we're both scumbags? These words seemed to reach the limit of Wiegum, making him also start laughing madly, just like this Jisu. I'm different from you, bastard. The two sides punched back and forth repeatedly. Until Wiegum decided to sacrifice his hand, causing Jisu to bleed from the head. Never touch the limits of crazy people. Seeing Jisu's name lying on the ground and starting to make about him, Wiegum started punching him like that, wanting to get a little angry. From the beginning of imagining that he was the brother who always peeled his neck whenever he was under pressure. Then there is the father who always only cares about grades. He continued to punch until an image of himself appeared. He also hated himself. Finally, he just had to put on his brother's listening hand. Wiegum seemed to sink into his own world again and was about to finish him off. Junji and his father also came to stop him at this time. But seeing this scene, the father couldn't help but be shocked because he didn't think he was like such a bastard. Wiegum didn't regret anything anymore. As a person who likes freedom, Wiegum decided to act on his own terms. Crush the rib paint, named Jisu. The flight to freedom of Wiegum also began from here. He smiled and said to his father, "Don't ask why you are like this." After this incident, Wiegum is also sent to a mysterious school called Mumyeong, the place where the father of grade 12 Gons used to study and left there, in front of the parents because this teacher looked quite polite and promised his mother, "I will take good care of her child." It seemed like he was finally a person who took a lonely path. But Junji's friend suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Ask where this guy who wears good listening bracelets is going. It turns out that Junji's friend also wants to be strong. He had to face stronger people sooner or later. So I chose to go to the Bear's Head School with Wiegum to grow up. When he arrived at this empty school, the teacher's name revealed his true face. Starting to punch students is no different from a beast. Are you fast on your feet? At this Mumyong school, only the 10 strongest people can leave here. It is a place where there is no reputation, no books, only fist-fighting. Weegum and Junji decide that they will have to eat onions until they become one of the 10 strongest. Remake life in this place.